Welcome to What the What, where we highlight the latest news and happenings in Alabama that's impacting you, your neighbors, basically your front door. What the What is brought to you by Alabama Values, a communications hub that uses media and visual stories to raise awareness around civic participatory activities and to inform you of the ways that you can get involved in the movement to build a better Alabama, a state that is equitable and inclusive for all Alabamians. So let's dive into today's episode. Last week, on Wednesday, November 3rd, the Alabama legislators settled on the redistricting lines and finalized the passage of 4 maps that will be in place for the next 10 years, despite concerns raised by legislators and grassroots organizations over how the maps were drawn, the lack of transparency and accessibility during the process, and not to mention how rushed the process was. At various points during the process, legislators were presented with proposed maps and data upon walking into the meeting and expected to vote and move on that information. There were important questions left unanswered, such as what are the changes? What was the rationale behind the changes? And important studies left undone, such as a racial polarization study. So why rush? Why not put in the work to just get it right? Well, just to note, Representative Paul Beckman spoke during the special session to remind the committee about Alabama's one-year rule, which says that candidates must live in a district 1 year prior to the election. Maybe that's one of the many reasons this process was rushed, to meet a deadline for the 2022 primary. During the reapportionment committee meeting prior to the special session, Representative Laurel Hall made a motion to delay the vote on the congressional map to give the committee more time to study and consider the map. Ultimately, Hall's motion was tabled in a motion by McClendon. During the special session, additional attempts were made to slow down the process to allow for a more thorough review of the proposed maps. Unfortunately, those attempts were also unsuccessful. The maps passed out of the legislature on November 3rd preserves the supermajority the Republican Party has had in the Alabama legislature, state school board, and even Alabama's congressional delegation, and continues to dilute the power of minority communities. Senators Bobby Singleton and Roger Smitherman presented maps from the League of Women Voters of Alabama that created 2 opportunity districts in the 6th and 7th congressional district. Senator Kirkpatrick presented the NAACP Legal Defense Fund's map, which created 2 majority-minority districts. Both maps were shot down by the Reapportionment Committee co-chair, Senator Jim McClendon, who gave a list of reasons why he did not think the maps were viable, including that they pitted incumbents against each other, which, by the way, is a guideline made up by the state. There really isn't a legal guideline that says maps must be drawn in a way that doesn't pit incumbents against each other. It is also important to note that the federal laws that governs redistricting activity for all states includes Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, the 14th Amendment, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Census Act, and the 3-Judge Court Act. And these trump any rules developed by the states. So the pitting incumbents against each other rationale Jim McClendon used throughout the public hearings, reapportionment committee meetings, and special session has no real legal standing. What the what? As mentioned during the last episode, without the protection of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, Alabama will be the first example of a state that previously had to clear redistricting maps with the federal government before drawing new districts. Now, the pre-clearance served as a checkpoint to ensure states' redistricting plans did not discriminate based on race, color, or member of a protected language minority group. Congressionally, Black Alabamians receive 14% of the representation, or reflect 26.8% of Alabama's population. So a fair map should be drawn in a way to add an additional majority-minority district to increase the representation from 14% to 28%. For the congressional map the Republican-controlled Alabama legislature approved last week already faces 2 legal challenges. Now, it is evident that more suits could follow over the design of the State Board of Education district boundaries and legislative districts. Democrats argue that the maps dilute Black voices. If you recall, during the last episode, we also shared that during the reapportionment committee meeting held on October 26th, Several legislators raised concerns regarding Alabama's only majority minority district, District 7. Well, now that the maps have passed, let the lawsuits roll in. Currently, there's a lawsuit, Castor versus Merrill, supported by the National Redistricting Foundation, where a federal court is challenging Alabama's new congressional map. Plaintiffs allege that the new congressional maps violate Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and plaintiffs are seeking a declaration that the congressional map violates Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Also, an injunction blocking the use of the congressional map and ordering that a new congressional map is drawn with 2 majority Black congressional districts. Redistricting litigation is common in all 50 states, but Alabama has a long history of unfair mapping practices. In a second lawsuit, Singleton versus Merrill, which was filed after the release of the 2020 census data, over the same issue on behalf of a group of Alabama voters, alleging that the state's current congressional map prior to the 2021 map is malapportioned and is also racially gerrymandered and in violation of the 14th Amendment by packing Black voters in a single majority Black congressional district and minimizing their influence in 5 majority white districts. To address this, the plaintiffs request that a new map be drawn, preserving county boundaries. At this point, the fate of the maps are now in the hands of federal judges who might consider 2 issues: whether Republicans kept enough number of counties whole within districts, and whether Black voters in Alabama should have adequate and fair representation. Redistricting litigation can take years, but the courts may have to move faster this time around. 2022 candidates have to qualify in January ahead of the party primaries scheduled for next May. You may be wondering how you can get involved and stay informed throughout the redistricting process. Well, follow us on social media and visit us on the web to catch future What the What episodes, and stay connected with the latest news and updates of what's going on in Alabama. And also connect with our partner organizations that are on the ground working to fight for fair maps.